Hello and welcome to What's Your Geek, where I talk about what I'm passionate about, what you're passionate about, and what's more obsessive than cataloging over 4,000 pre-painted plastic miniatures in an Excel spreadsheet. All right, this week is called The Wild and the Weird, and it is coming from shelf 4. You can see that's a missing shelf right there. And I want to say, as I speak, right now, this moment, the stream of Annihilation is being broadcast live on Twitch until 10 p.m. today. I was just actually watching Rudy Rutenberg against the Teen Phoenix and the Maze Arcana, and I didn't catch the very beginning, but I kind of was catching more of the end of it, and they had this cool battle on this pirate ship, and they're coming out with two new shows where they're each DMing, but the worlds are crossing over. It sounds really awesome. Looks like they have some really cool people on there. Anyway, so it's happening today, June 2nd, and also all day tomorrow, or from 10 a.m. tomorrow until 10 p.m. tomorrow. And then likely it'll be available, I'm guessing, as a recording on Twitch and also YouTube. And it features community-generated live play of D&D games. And this ad copy is from Wizards of the Coast website. To celebrate, we've invited a bunch of D&D streamers and luminaries to Seattle, Washington to hang out and roll some dice on June 2nd and 3rd. This two-day event is called The Stream of Annihilation, and it's 2 full days of streaming that D&D fans won't want to miss. They have folks from Misclicks, Maze Arcana, Critical Role, Dice Camera Action with Chris Perkins, and not to mention international gaming groups like Yogcast High Rollers from the United Kingdom and Dragon Friends from Australia. Anyway, you may be seeing this after the fact, but if you aren't and get in on it, just you Google Stream of Annihilation, and you can watch some live action D&D play, and it's pretty cool. All right, Geekdom, the frontier of the imagination. These are the voyages of Robert Dorgan, his 2-year mission to explore 90 different shells of original DDM miniatures, to seek out lore and tangential information, to obsessively go where geeks live in their passions and obsessions. I have 9 cases with 10 shelves each, a 2-year journey to go into geekdom where no one has gone before. My current count is 4,007 miniatures, of which 1,330 are unique. All right, well, it's looking like we're going to have another nice weekend in Seattle with a lot of sunshine and warmer weather. Today you may notice I'm not wearing a gamer-related t-shirt. This is actually the Crocodile Cafe. It is a restaurant, bar, live music venue in Seattle, Washington. At 2nd and Blanchard. My oldest sister, Stephanie Dorgan, is one of the co-founders of the Crocodile Cafe, and my twin sister, Constance, actually managed it for many years until eventually it was sold. And when it got sold, I said to my sister, Constance, I said, hey, hook me up. I want one of those t-shirts, because these are actually the t-shirts that the security guards would wear. And this is going to be tough to do. They say never turn your back on your audience, but I'm trying to show you. I'm not going to stick my butt in your face. I'm going to try to show you the back of this shirt, because it says behavior monitor on it, which I think is kind of cool idea for security. So I have no idea what that looks like until I watch it later, but if you didn't see it, it's not a big deal. Anyway, it's kind of an historic piece of Seattle during like the whole grunge scene, like when Nirvana, Soundgarden was coming up. Chris Cornell recently found in a hotel room in New York. Very sad, tragic story. Anyway, my point is, that's why I'm wearing this shirt. Just to give you a little more information about my history, my past, my connections. Yeah, and I like the shirt. I love the shirt. It's got some meaning for me. Anyway, so coming up, it's going to get wild and weird in here. My 4th shelf has a more loosely unified theme. It's a mixture of some animals and some of D&D's more unusual monsters. And I'll be back in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hey, welcome back. All right, as promised, I am going to show you my 4th shelf from case 1. As you can see, it's not a strong theme here, not like all elementals. You can see sort of here are some like snake-like dudes. Here are some, let me see. Here's like, I'll talk about these guys. Here's some celestial dire badgers. Here's some basilisks. Don't stare too hard. Don't turn to stone. You got your owlbears over here. Oh, and you got kind of an odd thing, but I'll talk about these probably first. Some adamantine dragons. And why are adamantine dragons sitting there in a thing that's mostly like kind of wild animals? Well, the truth is, I didn't like go out and buy 4,000, 7 miniatures and then go out and buy like 9 cases to store them in, right? When I first started, it was when War Drums had just come out. And it's been about 2.5 years since the actual D&D miniature line had started to produce miniatures. So I was kind of behind and catching up. And at first, I was just having the miniatures, buying them on taking them out of the box. They're all over the house. My wife was like, "This isn't going to work for me." So she's like, "If you're going to have them, display them nicely." So we started off, I think, with 2 or 4 cases, and then slowly, as I added more miniatures, started adding more and more cases. So some of the later cases have some of the later miniatures, and now I did at one point do some reorging of some of the cases, but for the most part, there is some amount of time sequence in terms of the earlier cases generally have earlier miniatures that I acquired first, and later cases generally have later miniatures. Of course, sometimes I acquired an older miniature later on, so it doesn't exactly follow sequentially the timeline of the miniatures themselves, but for the most part it does. And anyway, so I'm going to start off with an odd choice of miniature to be included on this shelf. It is the young adamantine dragon, and I'm guessing maybe maybe I ran out of space with the other metallic dragons, so I just put it there. But I don't know. I actually have 2 of these. I've got twins, 2 of these bad boys. I don't think I've ever actually ran an adamantine dragon in a game, and I might have actually used these at one point to fill in for a black dragon. Not that I don't have black dragons, but anyways, you can see it's pretty dark. If you're not really a stickler for details, you could pass it off as a black dragon. Anyway. So the interesting thing about the adamantine dragon is I think that it first appeared in 4th edition. In other words, it didn't exist prior to 4th edition D&D. And what's really interesting about that is there were actually what I would call 10 classic dragons that have been around since the 1st edition of the game. And so they're roughly divided into the chromatic dragons, or which are the black, white, blue, green, and am I missing one? Black, blue, green, red, and white. All right, and they're evil. And then there's the 5 metallic dragons, which are brass, bronze, copper, gold, and silver. And they're the good dragons. And that's how it was since 1st edition. Well, in 4th edition, I think they kind of made a big mistake. As much as I love 4th edition, they were thinking like, oh, if all the metallic dragons are good, how will the players ever have conflict or encounter them or fight them? Well, hello, it's really possible for 2 good aligned creatures to not get along, to fight each other, to hate each other, to go to war, to have different perspectives or viewpoints on things. So not many sore points do I have in 4th edition, but that's definitely one of my sore points is metallic dragons are good. Okay, end of story. Now in 5th edition, they did return them back to that typical scheme. But another odd choice I also did in 4th edition is in the Monster Manual, the original 4th edition Monster Manual, the first one, they only put the 5 classic chromatic dragons in there, right? They didn't put any of the metallic ones, which I was sad about because metallic dragons are one of my favorite creatures. So then when they came out with Monster Manual 2, they actually ended up saying, okay, we're going to put the metallic dragons in here. But they did an odd thing, I think, because they didn't include the brass and the bronze dragons. And I think they were saying, oh, they're so similar, particularly with the copper dragon, that they don't really stand out. So they substituted for the brass and bronze, the adamantine and the iron dragon, and so 2 new, basically, types of metallic dragons. And one of the interesting things about this is adamantine as a metal in the game is like the hardest metal that exists. As far as, there might be like, oh, no, we've got something else. No, but adamantine. If you remember in 3rd edition, there's some monsters like the Intellect Devourer that I spoke about 2 episodes ago that had damage resistance adamantine, which means you can have a +5 iron sword and whack on that thing, and it wasn't going to break through its damage resistance, right? Unless you had adamantine. So it's interesting that they made the adamantine dragon as metallic dragon, and yet it's not one of the strongest dragons. And actually, it ranks 4th on the list in terms of dragon strength, below gold, silver, and bronze, and this is according to 4th edition stats. Another miss, I think, is, well, I already talked about the good alignment. So my point is here, and also while I'm at it, I'll show you the card. So you'll notice this is one of the newer cards. Whoa, it just went. This is one of the newer cards because there was no 3rd edition equivalent of this. So this is the first time. It's kind of hard to see, but you can kind of see there's the artwork, there's the dragon. This is for the miniature battle side of it. And then here's the role-playing stat side for 4th edition. Anyway, my point is, I just thought it was an odd, or not. I'm not against like adding more dragon types. I just feel like you got the 5 classic ones, and those should always be the first. Let's say shouldn't be, but I just think it's better, and it's a more effective way to engage the player base when you keep those 5 classics, right? It's just like the 5 chromatic, the 5 metallic, been around forever. Keep it how it is. Now in 5th edition, they did kind of bring it back to that, and the good dragons are good, and the bad dragons are bad. So, case fixed. Next, I want to show off the Owlbear. You may be asking yourself, is that like a bear and an owl? And you would be correct. Yes, the Owlbear is basically a bear and an owl. And I've got a couple of different miniatures for the Owlbear that I can show you here. And the interesting thing about the Owlbear is this existed since 1st edition. And it's also one of the unique created monsters for D&D. So Gary Gygax, took a lot of monsters and creatures from mythology, like the Rakshasa, the tiger-headed humanoid with the backward hands. Well, that's from Indian mythology and stuff. So he borrowed a lot from cultures and history and mythologies and things like that. But the Owlbear is one of those ones that he just created whole cloth for D&D. And in 1st edition, I looked it up in the 1st edition. Got a picture here. 1st edition monster manual. There is you can kind of see. Yeah. See, that's the Albear right there. And then you can see here's the first mini, Harbinger, which is the very first set they released for 3rd edition D&D, or maybe it's 3.5 at that point. Anyway, I'm gonna say 3.5 and 3rd edition interchangeably, and mostly I'm just talking about 3.5. If I remember talking about 3rd edition specifically, I'll call it out. Otherwise, when I say 3rd edition, it's 3.5. Yeah, here's the first one they did. I don't actually have this mini, right? And that's a decent mini, And then I really like this one actually quite a bit. This Alder Rager, right? I just like the way his arms are up. He's like, it's me. Like, this is the kind of mini I would love to put down on the table and see the fear in my players' faces. And then here's something odd. Like I think with something like the Owlbear, because it's a unique creation for D&D, I feel like every few sets they feel like they have to bring out a new version of it or bring it out again, just so it's a prevalent or it's available, particularly when older sets go out of stock and aren't being made anymore. But the challenge sometimes I feel is like they missed the boat. I mean, this Owlbear just looks crappy to me, and I know aesthetics is personal opinion, but my personal opinion is I don't like this guy. Like, look at his arms. It's like he's got no joints. It's like they're trying to make it like a cross. I mean, the point of the Owlbear to me is that he's got, like, look, he's got the beak, the head of an owl, but he is a bear, right? I mean, the body is that of a bear. But it's almost like what they were trying to do here is trying to like mix it up and go, oh, well, his arms are almost kind of more like feathery wings, and so there's no joints in there, but it just makes it look really silly. And how is that guy going to deliver a powerful whack when his arms are like, look like they're made out of Play-Doh? Anyway, that's my rant. And here is the Alder Rager, the first one. That's from a 3.3rd edition set, right? You can see the thing. There's the back, role-playing stats. And then the Furious Owlbear came out in 4th edition. And so you can see this, the different cards, the different abilities and stuff. And there's the role-playing stats in the back. Anyway, my point is sometimes they miss the boat. Sometimes they come out with a really cool miniature, and then the later miniature just kind of sucks, and you wish they hadn't done it. But I guess how do you know that if you don't ever try? So, yes. So the one thing cool about the Owlbear is in 1st edition D&D, it was basically the result. It was basically a mad wizard's experiment, right? Crossing an owl and a bear. Now, that's how it came out in the 1st edition monster manual. In 4th edition, they introduced 2 different kinds of realms, kind of like copies, mirrors of the mundane, the regular world, but with slightly different things. And one was the Feywild, which was basically a more magical, fairy and lighter type of realm. And then they also had the Shadowfell, which was basically a darker reflection of the world. And in 4th edition, the lore was that the Owlbears came from the Feywild. And I was like, yeah, that's just not as fun, right? Oh, this weird creature just lives in this other realm and came from there. Now in 5th edition, they basically went back and said, hey, and for the lore section, they said, you know what, the Owlbear can exist in both realms. It can exist in the, perhaps it's in the Feywild, perhaps it's in the, perhaps it was a Mad Wizard's experiment, which I'm fine with, right? Like you don't have to nail it down, and you can leave the option of either one. But I really like the whole idea of some Mad Wizard experimenting. And it says in here, this is from the 5th edition monster manual. It says, scholars have long debated the origins of the Owlbear. The most common theory is that a demented wizard created the first specimen by crossing a giant owl with a bear. However, venerable elves claim to have known these creatures for thousands of years, and some fans insist that owlbears have always existed in the Feywild. So, most common theory, owlbears. See, you can see that dude is not feathery. He's got some really strong bear-like limbs. And what's interesting, too, is you can see he's actually crawling around like a bear, which I think is actually a pretty good depiction of the owlbear. But it's also interesting to notice it's such a strong, you know, iconic miniature that it was included even in the 1st edition. I mean, the first monster manual, 4th edition, when they didn't even include, like, all the metallic dragons weren't even in there, right? So you had to make the cut. And I also think this is also a pretty good depiction, too, of the owlbear. You know, so some slightly different renderings, some slightly different takes on it. But basically, I think the main theme is pretty much the same. Now, lastly, I'm going to talk about this miniature right here, which goes by the nickname of Land Shark. And the reason for that is it burrows underneath the ground and jumps up and attacks you. So this is one of the first, like the Owlbear, this is also an original creation for D&D. It was inspired by a plastic toy that Gary Gygax happened to have. This is not taken from any mythology. And it's called the Bulette, French, right? Not Bulette. That's not how it might look, but it is the Bulette. It is a French name. Anyway, I really like the Land Shark because it's been included in every edition of the game. It's also a really fun monster to run because it's got a great surprise factor. You know, the party is just adventuring, they're doing a wilderness trek, and suddenly the ground starts shaking, they see some ripples, and boom, earth explodes, rock, dirt goes flying everywhere, and this, you know, massive freaking creature just comes pummeling in the midst of them. And a lot of these monsters have like a kind of a cool like jump attack. You know, they basically can jump up and spring on the players and just mess up their world. And now in 4th edition, they've got 2 versions of the Bulette. They've got the large Bulette, which is a level 9 elite skirmisher, so right at the top end of heroic tier. And then at level 18, they've got the huge dire Bulette, which is a level 18 elite skirmisher. So elite means basically it counts as 2 monsters. So that means it's got a lot more hit points, it's a lot more dangerous, and to me, a lot more fun as a DM to run to mess with my players. Now in 5th edition, they kind of toned it down a bit. They only made it a challenge rating 5, which I would translate this to 7.5 level, 7, 8 level in 4th edition. But they did keep it the Deadly Leap, so that I'm happy about that because that is a really cool ability it has. And they also have the Bulette. Here I said every edition of the game. Here's 1st edition, and you can see, of course, the 1st edition artwork's not as good and fancy as other ones, but you can still see, yeah, it's still pretty much kind of the same kind of thing. And then you can see here in 3rd edition, there's a nice, that's a pretty good picture of it. If you look, you can see that pretty good match here on the mini and the Bulette. Interesting thing about 1st edition is it had 3 different armor classes. Like it had this regular heavy plate around it, which was really tough. Its eyes, in 1st edition, its eyes actually had their own armor class, but were really hard to hit. And then it had an underbelly. A small part of its underbelly was really very vulnerable and exposed, and when it would leap up and attack, that's when you could potentially get that. But there weren't, as far as I'm concerned or understand, solid rules about how to poke the eyes or how to get the underbelly. I think that was maybe more up to the DM's discretion. Anyway, so that is the Bulette. That is the Land Shark, and I do have a huge version of the Bulette, but that's on a different shelf, so that'll be coming later. And this Bulette version came out in 4th edition, so I have my 4th edition stat card for this Bulette, and there's the stats on the back for it. And later on, down the road, I will be showing off the huge Bulette, which came from an earlier set and was part of the 3rd edition. All right, so Since no one guessed the name of last week's miniature, I'm ending that contest and revealing the name. So here I'm going to grab it again from the shelf and show it off to all you folks. And it's way in the back. Oh yeah, it's one of my flying dudes. And it's that weird looking dude. There he is. Well, this, folks, is called a Varghoul. And for being a small, kind of odd looking creature, basically like a head with wings, you know. Kind of an evil creature. I think the original version came from Tartarus. It came from one of the outer, planes. But in first edition, had a really, really bad ability. I mean, bad for the player's ability. Good for it, right? When it did damage to you, you had to make a save versus poison. If you failed, the hit point damage it did was permanent. It was only like 1 to 4 points of damage, but it was like less. Unless you had a wish spell, those hit points were gone. So that could really, really suck if you got swarmed by some Varghouls and you got your hit points chipped away because you can't get them back. So one of those creatures was included in the game that was really quite deadly. All right, now for this week's miniature, I'm going to be showing off this guy right here. All right, and I'm going to give you a little clue. I mean, I think it might be obvious what he is, but there's sort of a trick to it. And you can see that he's smaller, but similar to this guy. And this guy is a werebear, right? You can see that, maybe. Werebear. So you might have part of the name, but there's something else about him that is unique and different, other than he's holding an axe and he's not as big. But so, I'm giving you a good clue. You've got part of the name. Try to figure out the rest of the name. And if you are successful, I have, oh God, this big box of miniatures. And I will send you one free of charge. Whoa, it's a big box. It's just falling everywhere. I will send you one free of charge and no cost to you. Just guess the name of that miniature. All right. Thank you for watching another episode of What's Your Geek. Please subscribe to my channel. Leave a comment. Tell me what you liked, what you didn't like, and what do you think about lycanthropes? Are you a fan of them in the game or not a fan? And what if a player becomes a lycanthrope? How do you deal with that? I had that happen in 3rd edition once. A player got bitten by a werewolf and became a lycanthrope. And it was a really interesting play how the other players dealt with it. So, go out there, and if it's not too late, well, it'll be recorded. I mean, watch some Stream of Annihilation, see what other people are doing, get inspired, get excited. And until next time, roll a crit.